workshop will be relatively interactive. We wanted to have all the groups kind of broken down. We'll do the group division kind of later on. But at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Sarit to walk us through how the workshop will be and to kickstart it. Okay.
Thanks, thanks Amit. Thanks, Amit. So I think just to get started, thanks for the patience and welcome you all to the UX for Starters workshop. To crunch everything that can be done in 3 days or 5 days of time in 2 hours is extremely challenging. So I just want to kind of define some rules of engagement in this small group, and that's the reason why this filtering is happening. One is that because we have 2 hours and now actually less than 2 hours, we have to be very respectful of time. So when we are doing certain exercises, certain group exercises, we have to be very, very particular about time. And the other ones, few other ones I'm very, very particular about. One is please have fun. Okay, if you're not having fun, then I think it's not an enjoyable experience with respect to design. And the second one, and then this I think is the most important one. And the reason why people come together and they do a group exercise, this is the one that I emphasize the most is please copy from each other. Okay, see what the other group is doing and build upon the idea, because design is an iterative process. And the third one being that I think if you have mobile phones, please keep it on silent or on the vibrator mode. It's like the basic customary stuff, right? Okay. Now, because we've got this housekeeping stuff out of the way, let's get down to the focus of the workshop, right? I want to emphasize this workshop is not for experts. This workshop is not for designers. But if you are a designer in the workshop, I think we'll be sort of preaching to the choir. But I think just want to make sure that this is really for the startup founders, the engineers, the product managers, those folks who feel that they need to get design understanding, they need to get started with design thinking, and they need to know how to work with a designer or hire a designer. This is the right place for you. Okay. With that, I want to talk about what are the 3 things that we're going to be focusing on. One, really how to really do the right investment in design by getting the right design talent. Second part is that just by getting a designer or engaging with a design firm or just getting to know somebody who knows Photoshop is not enough. It is about setting up a sort of a design thinking process within your organization, like a design. You have to set up a design culture through the right kind of design principles so that you can propagate that even if a designer is not around, because designer is just a facilitator at that point in time, right? So making sure that you set up the right design culture. And the third is how do you actually work with a designer in a group to create a conceptual design, because at the end of the day, product building process is a collaborative process, and that's what we will see. We'll get a flavor of it, but really want to make sure that we are not really going to complete the whole design. You're going to get a flavor of that, right? What we are not going to do is get into detailed design aspects, which I believe that if you get the right designer on board and you have the right culture in place, you'll be able to get to that, right? So with that, so one thing that, which happened in the morning, and I'll get into the details of the agenda for the workshop also quickly. In the morning, so Tim Parsi, by the way, is my boss's boss, right? And I've been sort of influenced a lot by him, but I just want to differentiate in terms of what he talked about and versus what's going to happen in this workshop is different. He talked about REM, which is rational, emotional, and meaningful aspect of design. This workshop is more about the mechanics of it. If that's the philosophy, how do you really get down to the mechanics of within your organization to get to the design such that you are able to achieve that philosophy, right? So that's the really key differentiator. Some aspects of the overall structure, there are a few things that I'm going to call out, not the whole thing. That initially we'll be setting up a little bit of context that how design is important and what kind of investment we need to do. Then we'll be talking specifically about hiring, and that's a piece that we'll be going to be spending some time on. Then we get into really working on one case study. Because I think the size of the group, we can't work on multiple case studies, so we have sort of chosen one case study. I understand that can be a limitation, but I think this is mainly to do so that we can have some sort of a collaborative learning process in place. And within that, we'll be understanding the context of that problem statement from a design perspective and then creating a concept for that. So that's what will happen. So there are 2 exercises, 2 group exercises, one exercise for creating the context and one exercise for creating the concept. Okay, so that's really the overall structure. So let's get started. So actually we can't do without a customary quote from Apple, right? We have to talk about Steve Jobs, and I definitely want to call this out. So what Steve Jobs has said that, that designers are handed this box and told make it look good, right? That's not what we think the design is. It's not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. And it's extremely, extremely important to understand that, that you cannot ask a designer to put a lipstick on the pig at the last minute. The designer has to be inherently involved in the process from the start to understand what works, and because the other people are also thinking from a design perspective. And if you think about it, the collaborative process of design, and this is something that Tim Parsi also talked about. He talked about this, that this is a three-legged stool, right? Designers need to have a seat at the table. But I just want to emphasize one more aspect of this, is that, the business focus is extremely important. That's when you understand what business models are going to work like. For example, whether, you need to get the supply chain right, or say you need to work on, say, profitability first or something else. So business part of the stuff has different layers to it. Then technology side, feasibility, whether or not we, take for granted, until unless you actually make it, you can make it with the right kind of technology, there is no product, right? That is also extremely important. My key point is that when startups do start, right, they invest in getting the right kind of a product guy. They invest in getting the right kind of architect, and they pay top dollars to that. They need to do as much with the design, because there are aspects of design which are layered aspect of design. This aspect of branding. Most of the time, while the business context is known by the business guy, the user voice, that who's going to be thinking from a user's perspective, right? Who's going to be thinking in terms of this interdisciplinary aspect of thinking of users as well as customers, as well as within your own colleagues, that is going to be a designer. So there are different aspects to that. And as well as the designer can live in the world of the fuzzy logic, where, you are in a more of a divergent phase where you're thinking of the next version of the product, as well as that guy can be on the place where they're executing the current thing. So both the things can be sort of done together. So there is a layered aspect to that. And just like the business and the tech part, you need to acknowledge that design has a specific role to play at the seat at the table. And that's the reason why you need to make the right investment in design. And when you are actually asking for funding, then you need to make space for that much amount of, how much money are you going to pay to the designer, right? Are you going to get a junior designer? Are you going to get a senior designer to get started? Is an extremely important make or break question for a startup. And to answer that, so I think on this slide, I just want to ask you a question about, when you see these companies, what do you think these startups have in common? Yeah? They are all designers, one. Yeah, that's one. Same. Okay. So I think partly correct. Yes, they are all designers. They were one of the co-founders in this design organizations, right? One thing that I want to emphasize, like if you look at, say, for example, Airbnb, they had a designer as a co-founder, but right now, can you guess how many designers they have on board? Just a guess, just a number. Just think about it. Just throw a number. 2, okay. Any other guesses? 200, okay. I think they're about the size of 200. Okay, 10. So anyways, I think the point is that right now they have about 25 designers. Okay, just let's reflect on that, right? Let's reflect on that. What it really means is that they are making the right investment in design, and that's the thing, that's the thinking big that they are doing, right? As the presentation we saw in the InMobi thing, right? They were not just, trying to execute something, but they were thinking big at that point in time. So, exactly, right? So what traditionally we have seen is that companies like Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, they've had a business or a technology guy coming together, or just the technology guy coming together, but trends are changing. It does not mean that in your startup you need to have a designer as a co-founder, but I think you need to give the design thinking or design talent enough space and enough investment so that you can do the right things. Okay, just want to kind of call out a few things, right? This example is from Google, and you are tracking a flight. You just search for a flight and you're tracking a flight. And there are different aspects to which, when you have done the right investment, what kind of result you can get. Okay. What is unique about this design? If you can just make one quick sort of, yep. Absolutely, absolutely. So this is where, the rational aspect of the design is being solved, right? There are two things happening, right? First one, the flight has not left and it's in green, that means it's on time. The second one, the flight is on the way, but it's in red color, that means it's delayed. Immediately you can see it's solving the rational need that, you know what, that the flight is delayed. You don't have to do something more. So it's like a friction buster. Right? This one is an example from Dropbox. Okay? If you see that in small details they're having fun. When there's a large file being uploaded, there's a small, you know, like a tagline there that, you know, it will take a long time, grab a Snickers. They're having fun. But the point is not this detail that they have done, but one interesting story about Dropbox was that, you know what they did? They shifted their marketing budget to UX, and they said, we want to get the best UX possible for our product. They shifted all that and invested in design, and what they have is a great UX right now. That's one of the reasons why the Dropbox use is such a seamless and such a flowing thing. And when you have made the right investment, then at some point in time, these kind of, you know, gems starts to happen. Okay, that's the point. So this is where some amount of emotional connection is happening. And when you look at something like this, right, this is Facebook. It's not a brilliantly designed page. Okay, this I just tried 3 days back because I wanted to actually bring this example to all of you. I tried deleting my Facebook account. Has anybody tried deleting their Facebook account? Okay. They emotionally blackmail you. You know what they do? Biju, Vilas and Mihir, they will all miss you. Okay? They'll all miss you. And what they have done is that they picked up all the guys whom I had interacted with them last, right? So there's a sense of recency, they have sense of belonging, they play on my emotions, they do a very meaningful design. So design is not just about how you have packaged it, how you have made it beautifully look good, the layout and the kind of, you know, the interaction and the new HTML, CSS stuff. You have done something so beautiful that, you know, of course, you know, I didn't delete my Facebook account because I think it's a part of my extension right now, and I think all of our extensions as well. But you can see how design plays to that, right? And this is the reason why we need to make the right investment in design. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we can go about making the right investment in design. And this is where we'll be talking about that we really need to hire the right folks. But there is a challenge, right? How many of you have faced a challenge in hiring a designer? Just by show of hands. Okay. Okay. It's crazy right now in India, right? Hiring a designer is a big challenge, right? You do not get the right folks. The right folks are in the bigger companies. They are getting certain kind of money. You cannot afford this guy. So what do you do? Okay. So if one key takeaway you need to have in this slide, which is actually not written, is that remember the fact that designers are emotional people. Okay. They are emotional people. If you tell them the right story of what you're trying to build and increase your little bit of wallet to get those guys in, you will get those guys. But there are a few things that we have to keep in mind, right? That design talent pool in India is limited, but the fact is that it is there. And we can find a process of how to get to that. The other fact is that there are different flavors of design folks who are available, right? If you have tried to hire, you will understand that, you know, certain designers have a good skill in visual design, which can make them look pretty. There can be designers who are in more interaction design. They are more analytical thinking. They can create the whole task flow, the journeys. They can understand the overall aspect of it. And there are folks who can actually go and talk to the user and understand their needs, but they may not be so great in coming back and creating a flow or making beautiful. Those are like user researchers. And there are certain specific designers who can do the front end part of it. So there are different flavors of design. Problem is that if you try to chase a unicorn who can get all of this done, it's not going to happen. So you need to look at where you are in the process of your startup, what you are trying to do at that point in time. Get the best guy in. I would start with a good interaction designer with basic good visual skills, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. It also depends on actually which startup you are, but that's what my suggestion would be out here. But to really understand the overall process, so this is something that, you know, I would call out. Now each of you have got this thing as a folder. What I suggest is that if you look at one of the handout which is there, which is this design talent acquisition funnel, and we thought this will be a key takeaway for you. Yep. Yep. Guys, can we make sure that the folks have, if we don't, we will actually be able to share with you a bit later, because I think we may have a bit more people than we have. Okay. 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 So don't worry about it. You will get that bit, but we may be actually a couple of people more. Okay. But I'll continue to show this one, and you will get the handouts a bit later. One key thing that I want to call out, which is different from hiring a designer versus hiring any other talent, are this aspect of the 3, 4, and 5. This is the different part, right? Okay, just like when you are hiring engineering talent, there will be very specifics to it. When you are hiring a business talent, there will be very specific to it. Designer speaks with their portfolios. At the end of the day, their portfolios are going to speak for themselves, and that's the stuff which is the most important, right? And one more thing that I may call out is that in this acquisition funnel, if you think about it, if you're just getting started and you don't have a context of design, it's okay to ask for help. Maybe get an outsider, outside design guys to say, guys, I know you can't work for me, but help me filter down the right design talent. You can always do that, but keep in mind that if the portfolio speaks for itself, you are on the right path. So let's get down to the details of each of these, right? So let's get started with the very first thing itself, right? How much time you guys have actually spent in writing job description for the various roles that are there in the startup? Just show of hands. Very few. Okay. I understand, you know, it's a rapid changing environment, but I'll tell you, this will go a really long way if you write the right job description, because this will help you validate that how you're going to judge the success of this guy when this person comes into the organization. This is applicable for the other things also. I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but just call out a few things. First of all, this is a job description from Airbnb. This is from Airbnb, and I'll call out a few things which add a very specific characteristics of what makes this job description special. Like, look at this one. The future of your mom's being able to use Airbnb will depend on your work. Okay? So it's, see, they're playing with the designer, with the emotional connect, right? The fact that you have unpackaged at least one Apple product at some point in time in your life. And the last one, that Moleskine is your middle name. And I think if it's a good designer, they will know what a Moleskine is. And by the way, Moleskine is this really sort of sophisticated, nice book in which people can sketch, and it's been around for 100 years, and they still do that. And the one with the rubber bands. Right? So what does this thing say? It says, first of all, you are right, telling a story to the designer that we are special and we understand who you are. And second part is that they are also conveying a bit about their brand. They're playing on that part. So JD, getting the JD right is very important. You also have this as a part of your handouts in your folders. Okay, let's go to the next one, right? The fact is that when you need to get the right designer or design talent, you need to go and hang out in those places where designers hang out. Okay, so these are few of the places where designers hang out. So this is like absolutely insider knowledge, but you can like trust me that, you know, we know where designers hang out. So few things which are very, very key places. There are a couple of these groups like the IXDA group, which is the Interaction Design Association group. You can mail to them when you have a job request, or the HCI IDC. This is the most popular emailing group which has been around for 10 years in India, and most of the designers sort of converge there. Okay, there are few events that are happening like the USID, the World Usability Day, and in fact Amit and I have been involved with the World Usability Day for last at least 4 years. But you will see that when you see the crowd out there, they're mostly designers, and we would definitely hope that, you know, the other folks also come in because they'll know exactly where to pick the design talent. And other places are these professional networks which are when we can do a good search on LinkedIn and you'll find, oh, I need an interaction designer, you'll get a bunch of resumes. And LinkedIn has done a very interesting thing recently, which I think will help you filter the designers even more. They have added the skills part that people are endorsing the skills. I think great way to see which of the designer you're looking for. You're looking for the researcher kind, or the interaction designer kind, or the visual designer kind. Okay. The other parts, I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but just the specific is there are design school alumni, and there are few top design schools in India. I'm not saying that you will only find good talent in good design talent in these design schools, but at least these are good starting point. There are multiple events that happen, like for example in Bangalore, there's NID Bangalore, and NID Bangalore does multiple events like that. There is Srishti School of Design, then there is IDC Bombay, which has got a pedigree from 1967, similarly National Institute of Design Ahmedabad, which is from 1961. So there are institutionalized design places where you can get these folks, and they have these campus recruitments that happen at least at the end of the year. You can make sure that you go there and make a pitch and get the right design talent. Right? The key part that I want to talk about is that, and this is where I want to actually share a quick story. And to prepare for this workshop, we will actually talking to multiple startups and asking, what is your design challenge, right? What happened with you? If you can tell us one story. And one of the startups founders said that, you know what happened with us is that we didn't know anything about design. The first thing that we did is from one of these institutes, we got 2 interns, and they started working on the design. And what we realized is that, it didn't work out for us. Okay, then we outsourced the design to a design agency. Something happened, we got a bit of funding, but actually it didn't really work out for us. Then finally, they are now investing in a little senior designer. They are scrutinizing every single thing. They're looking at the cultural fit and many things. And now they have ended up hiring a little senior designer, paid a bit more money. Now they are getting to go there where they're going. The key point that I'm trying to make is don't try to see somebody who can quickly, execute a thing like to create a UI design. Creating a UI design is not UX, right? It is not UX. So get somebody who can really help to create the larger picture, understand the user journeys, and then be a partner with you to get down to the design. Because otherwise, your iterations will increase, the product that will come out in the market will not be that great. And one key indicator of that is when Sharad was, asking us to look at, this is something which will be critical. He said, think about it, that in the top 100 apps on the App Store, on the Apple App Store, right now, there's not a single Indian company whose App Store is there. And the key differentiator being the design. Because we, as startups, we understand the importance of design, but we are getting not the right fit designs or designers or the right kind of talent to make that stuff happen. Okay? So don't just jump to conclusions about designers, really invest in that stuff. Okay. Now let's talk about the basic hygiene fit, which is the resume. There are few things that you may want to look out is that the number of years of experience is not important. What should you look at is that what is that they worked upon. So, okay, I think if one takeaway you want from this is if you just get a resume, don't even consider the design. Okay, you need to ask for what? You need to ask for that if you don't have a resume and a portfolio, this guy is not a designer, right? You really need to make sure that you have the portfolio along with the resume. Otherwise, you cannot even go far. But if you're getting loads of resume, you can use this as a way of filtering down, right? Then specifically, a portfolio is something that will have beautiful, pretty pictures, and this is the best foot forward which is being put together by a designer, right? How many of you have evaluated a portfolio at some point in time, a designer's portfolio? Okay, cool. And has it been challenging, easy, difficult? Yeah. Challenging in what way? What you saw versus what you got was same or different? Okay, great. So actually yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm coming to a couple of ways that you can make sure that you have sort of filtered that down. So let's get down to that, right? So portfolio is definitely, I would say picture is more than 1,000 words in a resume, okay? Portfolio is where they have put down the way they have thought about it, the way they have created something, how much emphasis they're giving to their own work. So this is definitely a start. But the couple of challenges, one, frankly speaking, we don't know whether they did that themselves or somebody else did or they were part of team which did it, right? So when you are evaluating a portfolio, and this is where, I would say that, this is my learning and, our crew's learning has been that the biggest predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So what you do is drill down on one specific design that they did and grill the designer so much. Why did you do this thing, right? What happened there? Why did you take this design decision? It will come out, at least this is the filter that we use, it comes out immediately whether they did it, was there any design rationale, they did this because what they were asked to do or stuff like that. So that's one clear indicator of whether they have done their own work or not. That's one thing. Yeah, you have a question?
Sometimes we ourselves don't get the design that much. So how to grill on that question?
Okay, I think it's a very, very good question. So the first thing that I mentioned, right, seek help when needed. So you can definitely ask somebody else to come on a panel. Say, guys, you look at the design part and grill this guy on this. I'll grill on the other aspect. Because portfolio is also the courtship game, right? You're really trying to see whether this guy is a cultural fit. One more aspect that I'll see, and this is where you'll see attitude-wise, because I said designers are emotional people. You need to look at whether the guy will invest himself enough with respect to the product that you're creating, right? Because this is an extremely important thing, right? The product vision has to be vision of each of the designer need to put in enough skin in the game to make this stuff successful. They cannot be more like a service. Oh, because you asked for it, I created something like this. So one thing that you can do is that when a designer is extremely defensive about their designs, it's not a good sign, right? Because the first thing that needs to happen is that design is an iterative process, so they need to change their design all the time. So when there's a good design rationale, oh great, oh this makes sense, I'll change it. When people are extremely defensive and they don't have a good reasoning, then that's a predictor of a future behavior. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen when you're having design reviews, when you are in a very tight timeline and you're trying to create something, and you know for sure that tomorrow, you know, you have to have a presentation with an investor or something, it's a very clear design rationale around which change has to be done. The person needs to be extremely malleable from a cultural perspective. So that's a key thing that you can look at. Okay. So another aspect is that how do you know if this guy has, also if he has sort of, if this is a funnel, right? You're filtering down. You filter down from a resume perspective, you filter down from a portfolio perspective. You may have done an interview as well. How do you really make the final call? And this is where we feel that you need to make sure that you give a design test. Okay? If you don't have a strong reference, absolutely give a design test. Again, you can have a panel which can help judge, or you can also look at few of the aspects that we have provided you that you can filter down on. Okay. So this is an example of a design test that we have created. This is also part of your handout. And I'm not going to go into the detail of this design test. This is more about, you know, how to design a carpool application kind of thing. This is something that we have used as a part of our organizations. But this has a flavor of a UI design, but this also has a flavor of understanding that this is not just a UI design problem. There are some, a carpool is an extremely behavior aspect of it, right? Like in India, if you have to make a carpool application work, you just don't have to do a UI design, you have to think about how you're going to persuade the user to go and actually use the carpool. So there are a couple of aspects of thing, and this is what we are really trying to judge, whether this guy is able to solve. Okay, so now here is a quick sort of a, say a test, right? Not test for all of you. I'll show you a couple of examples, okay, of the design test. This is one example. How do you feel about this? This is a carpool example that has come. And these are only 2 screens that you've received. You gave it on a Friday. This guy sends it on a Sunday. What do you feel about this? What would you do? Would you hire this guy or not hire this guy? Okay. And why not? There's no flow. It's very basic. What else? Absolutely. Now let's look at this one. Okay, yeah, so it's more towards execution, right? There is no thinking which has gone in. How about this one? I know you can't see the screens in detail, but you'll get a sense. Okay. He's thought about the users, he's thought about their context, he's thought a bit about the flow, and then last is the screen in which he has said that, you know, this is how I would do it. There's a reasoning behind it. He's spent time on it, and that's an indication of one, that he's interested for the job, because any designer who spends time and how much he has created in that short period of time is an intent to show that, you know, one, they are interested in the job. Secondly, they have thought through the overall design process. Okay. So I think let's move on, and what I would suggest is that there is this a specific handout which is about these evaluation parameters, about how do you go about evaluating a portfolio, as well as how do you go about evaluating a design test. And if you are not sure about it, seek help. Like get somebody on the board just to get to filter down the designers. Okay.
I just want to add one point about this that you have here, which you have as well. You know, the simplest mechanism.
I think that comes to the fact that you need to invest in creating a culture of design in the organization. And the culture of design does not mean just, you know, getting a designer and the designer propagates the culture. It is about all of you to think about that. Okay. So that's what we'll be focusing on. And the key point is that culture of design starts with design thinking. And this is where I want to kind of quote Tim Brown. So Tim Brown is the CEO of IDEO. And he says that thinking like a designer can transform the way you develop products, services, processes, and even strategy. And he talks about it in terms of these 4 or 5 key points, right? He talks about that you need to start with empathy, understanding who the users are. You need to look at the people who are coming in, are they able to step out of their own shoes and look at how the world is, right? And also work in an interdisciplinary way. And there are a few things that he talks about which I think are really important. I'm not going to go into the detail, but what I encourage you is to read this white paper that Tim Brown has written. And there is a site that he has on design thinking. It's a HBR article that you can download. and absolutely wonderful. So whenever I need inspiration, I go back and read that stuff. And these are few of the points that he talks about, right? First of all, design thinking, to have design thinking in place, begin at the beginning. That means the people who have the design thinking, and by the way, design thinking does not mean that these people need to have turtlenecks, and these people need to have weird shoes, these people need to be from a design school. They can be, anybody. One of your best engineers is the guy who's able to do that kind of a cross-disciplinary thinking. They are more like the T-shaped engineer. Include those guys from the very beginning. Include the designers if you have from the very beginning when you are conceptualizing even the product or the business case as well. The second part is absolutely everything starts with your customer, your clients, your users, who's going to be using the product. Make this as a focus of your thing. If you are not able to reach out to them, find few people who are the expert users within that thing, make them the lead users, collaborate with them, do co-creation sessions. All those companies who have been successful in products, they take this extremely seriously. Okay? And one thing that I really want to call out is, Apple is the most quoted article that, but recently when the whole Samsung versus this thing was happening, we got to see how much of user-centered design thinking actually Apple does to make sure that their products are usable. Right? Then the third part, which I think all of us know, try early and often, this is where I was saying that look at that particular designer who's not fallen in love with their designs, right? It used to happen. It used to happen with me, when I created the very first design. I'm like so happy with it that I used to stare at the screen for some time. Oh wow, you've done a wonderful job. Tabs, beautiful tabs, and nice labeling and everything. And the first thing that happened is that we did something called a usability test in a New York usability testing studio, and I can see the user there, and the guy is not able to find the submit button. Okay, so I was like frustrated, and I wanted to go and jump into the other place and say, by the way, go and hit there. This is the submit button. Go do that. This is where we have to step out, and we need to go back and iterate based upon those. So you don't need to invest a whole lot on that kind of processes, but even if you talk to 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 people, you're getting some feedback. Other part which I talked about, seek outside help. And this is where you're not just seeking outside help with respect to say a design thinker or a panelist who can come out. Also seek help of your best users, because they are your, they are also retweeting your brand and other stuff. Get them into the place, do some co-creation session. These are few of the new ideas that you're thinking about. What do you feel about it? That kind of stuff. And then finally, thinking about the budget, the pace of innovation. What this means is that you will not be able to invest completely into the research side or completely into hiring the best designer. You need to pick the places where the stuff is going to happen. But make sure that you have spent enough time and effort to get conceptual part of a product right. That's where you need to spend your budget. Oops. Okay. This we have talked about. And then finally, this says design for the cycle. Design for the cycle means that, if you think about it, that one of the biggest challenges in a startups are retaining talent, right? Retaining talent means that your talent is going to recycle every 12 to 18 months because they'll be finding other opportunities at some point in time, right? You need to make sure that during the time these guys are there, that they have gone through a inspiration to execution cycle completely, and they have really helped to kind of institutionalize that culture as a part of your organization, so that the new people who come up, they're able to pick it up. That means you're not becoming a person dependent, you are actually making sure that the culture propagates. Now, this brings to an interesting fact that, how do you really institutionalize this sort of thinking across the organization? And I thought this sort of chart sort of really helps out, okay? Not going to go into detail, but there are different aspects to make sure that how design is going to thrive. One is to have at least some sort of a design process in place. You need not have an exhaustive design process, but some kind of design process. Tim beautifully talked about the principles aspect of it, right? I'll give you one example of how principle can help to make sure that you are able to sort of validate your designs. Some sort of a user experience matrix to understand whether your product is getting successful, because there are business metrics to look at the product success, but there are UX metrics as well. Within culture, there is aspect of how do you work together. I'll talk about that. The other part is also how does a designer report into the organization, right? If a designer reports into the engineering organization or reports into the product organization or directly reports to the CEO, it comes into play. It is a strategic play. I would say that at the end of the day, if your product guy and the designer is working together very well, put them into the same place. They should actually sit next to each other. Because product can't be independent of the UX. That's at least what my thinking. So let's talk about each of these, right? How many of you practice this culture of work out loud? 1, 2. I'll highly encourage you to do that. Okay? I'll highly encourage you to do that. Stuff is so much in our hard disks and laptops, and when people are working from home, it's in their hard disk, right? This is the stuff that, if you have done something, even if you created a beautiful architecture diagram, put it up there, right? If somebody has created these screens last night, take a nice printout. Printouts don't cost much, guys. So go out and print it out there. And I'll share you one story that why this really helps. So I'm coming from a design school, right? And I did product design as my master's. And I used to, it was a beautiful institute, the National Institute of Design. And the way the studios were designed, they were designed like open studios. And whenever somebody used to do work, they used to just put it up. So we used to walk through the textile design studio. And whenever these, all the textile designers would do a beautiful design or something, they'll put it out. And I'll be intrigued and I'll go back and say, hey guys, this looks very interesting. So what is this? So I learned about the ikat, and I learned about, the screen printing technologies and different aspects of it. Because the stuff was there, it intrigued me, and I started asking questions. So this will be your, offline intranet. So you have to work out loud. The other part is the UX principles. And I'll call out Flipboard. How many people use Flipboard? Okay. I think all of us love Flipboard, right? They've done something beautiful. But did you know they had just 3 simple UX principles? And these principles are fast, beautiful, and social. Nothing complicated, nothing difficult, extremely simple, and they validate everything that they are doing, new feature, new functions, any new aspect that they're building with respect to these 3 UX principles. Fast being scannable content, aggregated, preload everything like a physical object, right? Beautiful, the content is the king. Social, people not RSS feed, participate easily. And in the future, you can see that they're also thinking of that it should be so beautiful that people should be able to publish their own magazines. Now fast forward in your organization, think of certain UX principles that you have set up and this difficult meeting which is happening where, there are tensions, and you just, you have this as a beautiful poster in your conference rooms. Guys, let's go back to our principles. Does it validate? Will it work with our users? These are the 3 things. That's it. Beautiful. Yeah. This is the confluence of the product, engineering, and design thinking together. And this becomes your way to validate stuff. Yeah, sure.
There's a fine line between UI, UX, and the whole conception of design. So today, if you see in the mobile space, it's design as such encompasses mostly the UX part. So as a designer, you could be very good in Photoshop and Illustrator and do something. But ultimately, how do you kind of get your designer to where you can evaluate this and have a principle of UX? Because UX is something that comes out of the blue and you say, does this work well?
Yeah. So I'll get to that. And I think this is a very fundamental question. And this is what we are saying, that when you are hiring, you need to first check whether that person is able to do that kind of a thinking. Second is that the work that this guy has done, this will come through that. And I think fundamentally everything starts with the user. Because if the person understands what's the user thing and what ecosystem in which the user is going to operate in, you're at a good place. But if the guy is interested in, should I use this button versus the other button and not caring about the rest of the stuff in which this UI is going to exist, I think that is the difference between a UI design versus a UX design. And we'll talk about specifically that aspect of it to carry that through. Okay, so I think because we have a lot of content, I'll sort of kind of quickly go through this. The challenge really is that, the startups are iterating really quickly, right? How much of they can invest in a process is a big thing, right? Because the advantage that startup has, because they can move quickly, because they can innovate quickly. So how much or what you should be doing is really the question, right? And for that, I would say, because I think the minimal viable product has become a sort of a, the buzzword, I would say aim for the minimal desirable product. Because this is what really is going to differentiate you. Because even though in your first iteration you may only reach to the minimal viable product, but there's a larger picture of this is the minimal desirable product that you want to get to. Okay, so aim for that, and with design being the differentiator. Okay, how often has this happened with any of you? Okay, has it happened to any of you? Okay, well, you get the picture, right? And I think this is the reason why that minimal desirable product comes in. At least, have some picture about it and then get started with that. And for that, let's talk about a design process. And there are different flavors of the design process. We picked up the design process which has been used at the Stanford D School, being in the Silicon Valley. They sort of really understand. And they are using some of these terms which are very specific that the startups and these different stakeholders can understand. And you can see it really starts with empathy. You need to understand who the users are. But the challenge part with the process of design, if you think about it, okay, let's get to this one. So think about it, that there is a bias towards this end, right? Quickly get to a prototype, let's iterate and we can figure out something later, right? So there's a bias towards this end. This is where we feel, and this is where we want to focus the rest of the workshop on, is that the empathy and the define part, and the last part where you are not getting enough qualitative user feedback, because you may get some numbers, matrix, but you are not getting enough qualitative user feedback. This is the stuff which is missed out, and this is the stuff that really differentiates from a good product, between a good product and a great product. Okay? So let's talk about empathy. Right? Empathy is where it really gets started. This is the crux of it. You need to have some sort of a user understanding. And it really comes up with being with the user in the user's context, and there is no absolute substitute between talking to the user. Okay, let me actually talk about this, right? You understand the term deja vu? Okay, so what's deja vu? Feeling what you have felt again. Looks like you've been in this situation before. Okay. It's occurred to you before. Have you heard of the term Vuja De? Has anybody? Okay. So Vuja De really is that, that you have been in this situation before, but you're coming with a fresh eye and looking at this thing from a completely fresh perspective. And this is the thing that I feel that, startup founders should bring in, or the engineers, and they need to come with Vuja De. Like remember your first trip outside the country. Okay? Remember you've been to the US or some other country, you'll notice every single thing. You'll notice the metro counters, how they open out. You'll notice every single piece of signage. You notice every single thing, right? But when suppose you go back to your home, like I am from Delhi, right? And I did one user research in Delhi, and I was with a typical Punjabi family doing user research, and I am born and brought up there, right? But I had to go there and look at it from a fresh perspective that, there is something else happening, there's something deeper. Along with the needs that people are asking, there is stuff that people are not saying. And this comes up with the understanding of being in the user's context, and this is what needs to happen. I just want to call out one thing, and this is actually one of the projects that I was involved in. So before I was at Yahoo, I was with a company called Human Factors International for 10 years. And one of the projects that we were doing for Intel was coming up with the Classmate PC, which was a $100 PC, which could be for the emerging markets. And we were doing research in Mumbai. And the last picture that you'll see is that, the houses were so small that the PC actually was below the table, right? It was not even being used. It was below the table because it is not being given enough emphasis that it is directly related to education. It was bought for educational needs, but it was being used for entertainment. It was being used for movies or games, right? Now, when this product comes in the market in the future, will this still solve this problem? Probably not. So what is going to be the differentiator? That's what we came out. So we actually created the whole ecosystem around which it has to work, right? It has to come through the channels through which this is going to make a difference. You need to understand which context it's going to work in. The content play has to be there and other stuff has to be there. Only then the user experience is going to be great. So there's no alternative. But luxury of doing this may not be there, but at least you can use some techniques like the lead user I was saying. Talk to some of your expert users who are there and get them on board as a part of the panel and start with that. But if you get any opportunity, don't lose out any opportunity to talk to the user. The other part is that there are enough and more products out there which you can use as a way of doing some kind of a remote testing, getting some sort of input through surveys and stuff. There's a handout out there. I'm not going to go into the detail. But the key part is it's extremely simple to do that. You have Skype. You can actually have an interview with the user who's out there. You can connect that guy, right? You can actually use WebEx to show your screens and be on a phone and record that session, show it to your engineers later on. Extremely high impact. These are extremely low cost, simple tools. The fact that even if you have talked to 3 or 4 people to set that up to basic understand needs, you can create a questionnaire out of that and send it to 400 people and get a result in 4 to 5 days. So this is like a really quick way to do that. And I'll tell you, there is a study that shows the more touch points that you have with your customer, more likelihood that your product will be successful, and there is no alternative to this. Okay. Then let's get down to the details. This is where we will quickly get into the group exercise. But before we get into the group exercise, I'll just set that up. So if I can ask you to open your handouts. So there's a business case. And I suppose all of you have received a number, right? Have you received a number? Okay. Okay, so let's start with this, right? So if you can start from here and start counting from 1 till 8. So, if you can. So I think just to set the context, you have within your folders, there is a business case study, and plus this is up there. Okay, there's a bit of text difference, but I think one way or the other, you can look at the stuff on the slide. That's what you have to kind of work on as a part of this group. Just few sort of housekeeping rules. We're going to be doing a couple of exercises now. We'll be creating a context as well as we'll be creating the concept for that. And to facilitate that, we have this designer crew. One of the designers will get embedded in your team. So they are part of your crew, but you are going to work together, right? Don't let designer do all the work. Okay. Okay.
Don't let them make you do all the work.
Okay, right? But this is a collaborative process, right? And we are trying to do this really fast, guys. So this is just 2 hours.
So what we're going to do is we'll spend about, the next 15 minutes.
I'm not going to go into the details because you have a handout, you can get into that. What you're trying to do is that you are a CEO of a startup which is called OfficeSaman.com, which is into online supply of office supplies in India. Okay, that's what you're trying to do. You had started this, you got some traction, but there are multiple competitors coming to the fray and you're losing market share because people are saying that guy's or the competitor's experience is much better, right? You're not able to keep your existing users. So that means your existing users who are the office managers per se, they are not sort of coming back. That's your biggest problem. Okay, that's what you're trying to do. And what you have done now is that now you have a designer on board because each of you guys have a designer on board, right? You're lucky to recruit the right designer. There's a designer on board. And what you really want to do is that you want to understand your users being the office managers more deeply. What you want to do is that you want to create a product story, a UX story in terms of how the product will be used by these users before you start designing it. And then you want to conceptualize a high-level design. I want to clarify, we are not doing any detailed design as of now because in 2 hours I think that's humanly impossible. But we are trying to get to a high-level design. Okay, so with this context, let's get started. So you remember the overall process, the empathy, define, ideate, prototype, test. What we are trying to do is that within that, if you see the empathy and the define part is the context, and then rest of it is the context part of it, right? So let's get into the context aspect of it. So when I was sharing with you the classmate PC story, right, I was talking about the ecosystem. What exactly is ecosystem? Ecosystem understanding from a UX perspective is really thinking about who your primary users are, and in which environment are they working in, because that environment is going to influence how they're going to be using the product, right? Environment is extremely, extremely important, and I'll tell you why. Because I was working for a big bank as a part of my consulting time, and what they did is that they asked us to do an online reservation of a site. We did a beautiful job of that. Then they said, oh, you know what, one of the product guys had a brilliant idea. You know what, we have long queues in the branch itself. Why can't we put the same website as a kiosk in the bank, in the branch, and it will actually reduce the queues? What happened? Nobody used it. Why? Because the environment was different. When you are doing any transaction, you're sitting at your home or your office in a very secure place. you really want to make sure that nobody's looking and nobody's looking at the password that you're typing. And now there are the different ways that keyboards are also designed. Environment matters a lot. If you're doing a mobile, it matters even more. Okay, so think about the user's environment. Think about who your primary users are and who else do they interact with to accomplish the tasks. So these would be other people, these could be objects, these could be artifacts, these could be other things, right? Think about that. And finally, how will they use the product? If they're interacting with people, that means they are doing this through your product, right? They will be doing this through your product. What are those product stories? What are your user stories? What is the contextual stories that you can think about? So these are the three key things. And now to talk about ecosystem, I'll share with you the picture from the Classmate PC story. And this, again, to emphasize, this was the work that I did when I was in Human Factors International and with Intel. And to depict this thing to the executives, this is what we did. This is the crux of the user research that happened. You can see that the time of a child who's going to be using this device is divided between home, school, and tuitions. And Intel wanted to push this product from the school, but interesting thing came out of the study, and if you just see, right, what it says, tuitions is for studies and school is for masti. Very fundamental aspect of ecosystem thinking, that when somebody is thinking about pushing this product, it can't just happen through the school. Your tuition and all those tuition teachers and all those tuition establishments have to be part of it. Only then it will be a part of your education ecosystem, otherwise it will not. Other is that it's extremely packed day. When does this guy time to even get more time to sit on a device and do something? So it has to be mobile. That means the person should be able to carry this from home to school to tuition in different places. And that's when, and this was done in 2005, by the way, and we came up, the first idea that we came up was like an iPad, of course, and it didn't get built because of multiple reasons, that that Apple does the hardware as well as software, but the company that we are building this for, they are only doing the hardware. But you get the picture, right? Now, this is a sort of an ecosystem that we thought would be, interesting for you to get started for Office Saman. Thinking of Office Manager, the general consumer can also use this website. There are logistics and supply and other facts. But I'll not get into the detail of this because I think as a part of your exercise, you can kind of think through this, right? And the key point that I want to emphasize is that if you see the connection between an Office Manager and the Office Saman, the kind of things that you see, like search for product, discover products, order products, payment, managing orders, each of that small verb is a way that they will be interacting with the product. These are the stories that you need to deeply understand. These are the connection that you need to understand, right? And the circles are nothing but they're indicating the environment of the person that they would be operating in. They would be either in a home office, the supplier may be actually be on a mobile as well as on something else. So this is the context that you need to understand. The other part is that you need to understand that each of these users, but the aspect of persona is that this is a one representative user of that user group. Like, you can't deal with the entire set, but if you have characterized one user, you can deal with that guy. And there is an example that we have created, you can go through that in detail. But one key part of the exercise that I want to talk about, that I want you to think about the story or one aspect of the story in which this user is going to be interacting with the product in the future, so that you have solved what you want to solve for this future exercise, right? You want to be thinking about that. So scenario is always about a story. It's one instance of a story in which users are interacting with the product. They are less about the technology, they're more about the user, because you can derive technological, business, and design implications out of it. So think of it as a user story. Think of this how you're writing a screenplay, right? The other part is that focus on probabilities, not possibilities. Because as developers, and I'm also have been in my past life, I've been an engineer, I used to think in terms of possibilities where, if then else, right? Everything is possible. But when you put a lens of a user, their limitation, their behavior, that is a probability. So I want you guys to thinking in terms of that probability, right? And there can be different aspects of, scenarios. This is not from this case study, but example could be like a housewife will come to our website, browse and purchase a vacuum cleaner. There could be a story about that, right? The fact that teenager will use a product to make free video calls to her sister in another country, there can be a story about that. Think about which story you want to create. Yeah?
So, the activity you're doing right now, the goal for that in the next 10 minutes or so that we get
I really want you to do, write a story about that one specific interaction with this product in the future. of the persona of the user which has been given to you. The designer will facilitate. Write this as a simple story. Write it such that your design implications can be derived from it. Leverage the ecosystem which has been given, leverage the persona which has been given, and think of probabilities, not possibility, and write it from a user perspective. So let's get started. We have about 15 minutes for this. Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't. Does somebody?